So, hello and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Episurf's second ever Capital Markets Day. We're here at the Red Eye studio. I'm here with my colleagues, board members, and I would also like to say welcome to all investors and other stakeholders who are watching this live or in the room. We have a couple of hours ahead of us, and I think we will stick to this timetable reasonably well, which means that we will end up at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. If you have any questions throughout the afternoon, please send them into our email address at ir@episurf.com or use the function at the website at the redeye.se. And I will start and provide you with an update on our strategy and where we are at the moment. And the team that will help me during the afternoon is Professor Tim Spalding from Cleveland Clinic in London. Tim has been with Episurf for many years now, and in the last years he's been really focusing on the clinical studies of the Episealer device. Dr. Clemens Kösters from Greven in Germany is a friend of ours since his first surgery in 2016, and he will speak about the role of the Episealer implants in his clinic, and he has been helping many patients in the Northern Westphalen area in Germany. And I think you will find that presentation quite interesting. Katarina Flodström, you've met before. She's the COO of Episurf, and she's been with us since the start. And since January, Steve Caswell is the head of sales in our non-US markets. He will provide you with an update on our strategy in his regions. And Patrick Jamnik joined Episurf a little bit more than a year ago, and he's running our US activities, and he has an interesting presentation focusing on the US strategy later on. But first, Professor Leif Ryd is not in the room today. He is in Switzerland working at a cadaver lab on our product development efforts. And I'm glad for that prioritization. Leif, it's great working with Leif. It's been a couple of great years together. And ever since he got this idea around 2007, he's been very dedicated to Episurf, and he still is. And we are all grateful for him taking the step and starting Episurf now more than 10 years ago. We will try to be as clear as possible during the afternoon. However, there are a few abbreviations and industry words, so this slide might pop up from time to time. I don't expect anyone to remember all of this, but we will nevertheless use this just for the sake of simplicity. So, getting into it, we will start with the slide I used more or less exactly 2 years ago at the first Capital Markets Day. So what's been leading up to the situation now in November 2022 is the intense focus on clinical studies and product development that we undertook during several years. At that point in time, we were also looking forward to a potential US launch later in time, which was subject to the IDE clinical trial, our Epic Knee trial, that was going to lead up to a PMA approval. We're still committed to that trial, but it has proven a challenge to run it, especially as we started it during the pandemic. We were also conducting a regulatory review of several markets internationally, and the US launch was planned a little bit later on around 24-25. So if we look at what's actually changed since then, and I would like to highlight a couple of things. So on the clinical studies, we did see great 2-year results 2 years ago. But today you will see the largest ever presentation on 5-year data for the Episealer. So we really added on to what we did 2 years ago. The IDE clinical trial I mentioned, that has been a challenge, still is, but we are still committed, as I mentioned, but that also means that the timetable has been postponed a little bit for that particular product. However, we have been able to move the US launch earlier, so we're looking at the US launch already in early 2023. And that's due to the product expansion that we undertaken in the last years. And we really kickstarted this during COVID. We had some ideas on the drawing table, but during the pandemic and especially in 2020, we really started to make a reality out of our plans. And you will see the results of that today. The regulatory review has also led us to a great number of global commercial opportunities, and we're really now seeing that we can execute on a much more global agenda in our commercial activities outside of the US, as you will see today. So just a little bit of repetition. We're looking at the state of the knee degeneration, and the age of the patient. And now I'm focusing on our first product group, the Episealer Knee implants. They are intended for the middle-aged patient. They're often 35 to 65 years of age. And in the middle here, there is a big treatment gap, and we are aiming at driving the creation of a new category in orthopedics, and we want to be the market leader in this segment. We come after the early biological procedures, but well before the knee replacement surgery. We're doing this on a global basis, targeting a great number of people. And just to give you an idea, in the Western world, about 8% of the population suffer from osteoarthritis in the knee. So we're talking about a big market out there. And early on, our customers and our surgeons have been using the Episealer implants predominantly in the sort of 40 to 50s maybe, with a smaller single lesion in the knee. But later on, we've now seen that the surgeons are using the Episealer implants for more complex cases, as you will see today. And again, just as a point of reference, about 2 million knee replacement surgeries are taking place in our target markets every year. So again, this is a big problem. And what are we really looking at in the treatment gap? So this is a very typical patient, a 37-year-old guy. He has a failed microfracture procedure, a single lesion in the trochlear area. But it can also look like this, a 63-year-old patient with, again, a single lesion. The patient age-wise is probably a candidate for a knee replacement, but the lesion is the size of a coin, so a full knee replacement would be a significant overtreatment in this case. But it can also look like this, a 44-year-old with multiple lesions. So in this case, the patient was treated with 2 Episealers. And look at this one, 55 years of age, a nice tibial plateau, that's the sort of lower part of the knee joint. Too young for a knee replacement, and 3 isolated lesions in the knee, treated with 3 Episealer implants. And there are many like this. So we see our patients all over the treatment gap, and we know that our customers, the orthopedic surgeons, they really appreciate the opportunity to be able to treat this patient with our solutions, which they didn't have before. So just a quick strategy recap. We've been working quite focused with this strategy for several years, and we have generated a significant amount of clinical data in support of our technology. We've done this on a global basis, and just to give you a number, in the last 12 months, there's been Episealer surgeries in 20 countries, so there's really a foundation for growth in place. Reimbursement has been challenging for us as we are targeting several markets, not only in Europe, but also globally, and the systems are very fragmented between those markets. However, based on the strong key opinion leaders support we have and the data we have, we're now in a really good position to really work through the reimbursement systems, and we saw that in the UK most recently with the inclusion in the NICE guidelines. And on our efforts to always maintain a high standard on our technology platform, we've now been able to deliver new products, as you will see today, and we're very glad of that. What we said 2 years ago was that we were, over the long term, targeting a 30% market share in all our markets, with the 15% market shares 3 years after the US launch. And this was then based on the original Episealer implant technology. That's still in place, and as we get the approvals for additional products, I think you should look out for updates on this with respect to each individual product. So quickly, on the data, we started off with the preclinical studies showing that this technology could work and be an alternative also in the clinical studies, which we later showed, and we saw some excellent results, and we are now really being able to compare with other modes of treatments for these patients. The technology platform has generated now much more than a one product company. We have a product portfolio being ready for launch in several countries globally. And we have done so at a small scale in many countries. I'd remind everyone that the majority of our revenues are still in Germany, but we have been starting to do the first surgery with the first customers in a great number of countries. So there is great opportunities for scale on a global basis. So our customer, who is it really? So it is the orthopedic surgeon. And the orthopedic industry, just have a look at it. So it's a big market, $54 billion US dollars. And the joint replacement part of that, about 36%, is the largest single segment. And in that segment, the knee segment is the largest sub-segment. During the pandemic, the knee segment was the hardest hit part of all. So it's been a couple of tough years, but I think we're coming out of this now in a good way. And if you look at the geographies, the US market is the absolutely most important market for us, as it is also the single largest market in the orthopedic industry by some margin. So, looking at our products and our plans for the coming years, so it's important to distinguish between those products. So what we started out was to create a new category of implants in the orthopedic industry by focusing on the focal lesions, the single lesions in the knee. The competition is probably lower, as there aren't any really good options for these patients, and there has been attempts with standardized implants for these lesions. They don't really work, so there's not really much competition if you look at similar products. However, the clinical and regulatory barriers to enter that market is probably slightly higher. Same for the Episealer Talus. We won't focus too much on this today. This is our first implant system for ankle lesions. A really interesting market, a great technology, works very well in the cases we've done. Again, a really unique product and not much competition. However, again, clinical and regulatory barriers slightly higher. But look into our new products, and then you will see that we're targeting the much larger osteoarthritis market. So this is our first two-component implant system for the knee, the Episealer patellofemoral system. As you will see that there's one component for the femoral bone and one for the inside of the patella. The competition is probably higher, as this is a well-known concept, sort of implant to implant, and there are other products out there. We believe we will have a really strong offering to potential customers, as we are the first truly individualized implant system for these kind of lesions. But on the other hand, the regulatory and clinical barriers, they are on the lower end, and we will be able to get market access in the US through a 510K. In this context, then in an easier fashion than with the first product line, as we are going into an established market. And similarly, for the greater toe, the Episealer MTP system, we're also targeting the larger osteoarthritis market, where there is products today on the market. Surgeons are using some of these mini implants for treating these lesions. There's not a clear winner in that market, and we believe we have again, a really strong offering, and we can benefit from a 510K route to target the US market quite early on as we're going into an established market. And our market, so just quickly give you the big numbers. So for the first, the Episealer knee market for the focal lesions, that market is estimated to be worth about $1 billion. The Episealer patellofemoral market, we know today that the revenues for Episealer for patellofemoral implant systems in the US market amount to about $75 million. But the market is underserved, as there are not too many products like that, and most of these patients, they receive a total knee replacement today. So there's room for growth, and we can take a share of the existing market, and also the great opportunity that exists, as about 18% of all osteoarthritis patients with osteoarthritis in the knee, they have osteoarthritis in the patellofemoral joint. So the opportunities are significant. On the lower extremity side, the potential market for the Episealer MTP system is worth about $400 million in the US, and a similar amount in our non-US markets. So all in all, we're looking at a potential market of about $2 billion with room for growth. And how are we going about targeting these markets? So I will start to look and discuss this by looking at the quarterly customer acquisition rate. So essentially, how many surgeons are using our products every individual quarter. And this slide is just to give you an idea of whether we've been growing or not. And pre-COVID, we definitely had some growth, but you should remember that surgeons were, in the absence of clinical data, often trying out our products. They did a case or two, and they wanted to follow up on their own patients before they really could start to use it more widely. And then the pandemic hit, so it's been a little bit up and down. But now, in the last quarters, we've really seen a strong growth in our customer base. The individual volumes are still a little bit lower than what we would like. However, we are coming out of COVID. The backlogs of knee replacement patients are substantial out in Europe. But again, definitely an improvement, and the last 3 quarters are looking quite good. And the average growth rate during just the last 3 quarters on customer base is 48%. And we will take a look at that number and see, okay, what could be driving growth in the years to come if we maintain the growth rate at 48%. So we will map this out to our existing and future products and also our markets. So first of all, the 48% growth, that's generated from our first product, the Episealer Knee and Episealer Talus products in the markets in Europe and some markets outside of Europe. But the absolute majority is from the German market. So again, room for growth. And if you look ahead in the next year with these products, we will be able to launch in Singapore, Malaysia, and also some additional markets in Middle East and Asia and even in Europe. Over the long term, we are targeting a US launch for the Episealer Knee implant system. However, that's dependent on the success of the Epic Knee trial. If you move down to our new products, the Episealer Patellofemoral system, we will open the US market in 2023 for that product. And the Episealer MTP system, the target is to access the US market in 2024. Over the slightly longer period of time, we will try and work hard towards launching these products in Europe, Middle East, and in the Asian markets. And we will, of course, bring this forward as much as possible, as there are great opportunities for these products also outside of the US. So we think there is room for growth in the coming years, and we think we have a strong foundation to work from with the Episealer Knee and Talus in our current markets. And as you see and clearly see on this slide, we will open new markets every year now in the following years with both the existing and new products. So I'm not going into any guidance or forecast, but we will make a calculation example just to see what this would generate. So if we look at the 48% growth rate that we had now during the year of the customer base, and we are at about 100 orthopedic surgeons who are using our products now on an annual basis. And if you were growing this by 48% a year, you would end up somewhere between 500 and 1,000 customers. And that's a wide interval, I know, but it gives you an idea of where we're heading and how we are thinking about this. The drivers for achieving this is, of course, what I just mentioned, the launch of new products in new markets globally. And if we assume a run rate of what we are expecting in the first years of about 7 to 10, and then later on from 10 to 14 surgeries per year, at our current pricing with that customer group, you will then up with a commercial breakthrough, and you see the revenue numbers in 6 million on this table on your right. So this is how we are thinking about the future, about the next years, and how we position our new products and new geographies in this context. So before I move on, I will just leave on a positive note. So the first surgery we did in 2012 here in Stockholm, a 57-year-old individual, very active, small lesion size of the coin in his knee, and he was suffering from severe pain. So he was the first patient who ever got an Episealer implant, and at the 5-year follow-up in 2017, he was doing really well. And I will say thank you and just leave you with his testimonial now when he's coming up at the 10-year anniversary. Thank you very much.